Good afternoon. Welcome to Africa Today. I am Udwak Daniel. First, let's talk the headlines. And on the headlines, Universities Commission in Nigeria withdraws directive to reopen schools. Still on the headlines, relatives and officials commemorate victims of 2002 shipwreck in Senegal. Also on the headlines, Sao Tome opposition wins legislative vote. And on sport, Eagles seek to end Algeria dominance. And now the news in detail. Nigeria's National Universities Commission, that is the NUC, has withdrawn the directive earlier issued to pro-chancellors, vice-chancellors and governing council members ordering the principal officers of public universities across Nigeria to reopen schools. In a letter signed by the Commission's Director of Finance and Accounts, Sam Onazi, on behalf of the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, that is the NUC, Adamu Rashid, stating that the circular stands withdrawn. The letter also stated that further development and information would be communicated to all relevant stakeholders. Recall that the federal government, through the National Universities Commission, that is the NUC, issued a directive to pro-chancellors, vice-chancellors and governing council members of public universities to reopen public institutions and universities to ensure students are allowed to resume lectures. The vice-chancellors had, however, responded through the Secretary-General of the Committee of Vice-Chancellors, that is the CVC, Yakubu Ochefu, saying it was to reviewing and studying the initial directive. The National Industrial Court of Nigeria had ordered the striking lecturers of public universities in Nigeria to call off their ongoing strike. And away from that story, the Independent National Electoral Commission, that is the INEC, has urged journalists to shun corruption during polls and critical issues concerning the Electoral Act in the forthcoming general elections. The Honorable Resident Electoral Commissioner, that is the REC, Olusegun Agbaje, INEC Lagos State, at a workshop in INEC's Processes Innovations, noted on Monday that the 2023 general election is about 5 months away, adding that Nigeria is at the threshold of another historic event. The commissioner also disclosed that the media is to always uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people.
The media, in its pursuit to ensure that the rule of law prevails, must not in itself become lawless. From both the developing and developed societies, the media has the power to impose its decisions, its views and opinions on the rest of society. The media dictates public taste, decides what the public should know, how and when it should be known, and decide what is fair enough for public consumption. Also, it is the role of the media to ensure that the principles of fairness and balance in the coverage of political party campaigns and activities are observed.
Also, INEC National Commission in charge of voter education and publicity, Festus Okoye, reminded the media of their constitutional and legal obligations, saying the status apparatus, including the media, shall not be employed to the advantage or disadvantage of any political party or candidate.
As first-hand witnesses to the activities of the Commission, the INEC Press Corps is supposed to be the repository of electoral information in Nigeria. This places them in an advantageous position to play a critical role in shaping the opinions and editorial policies of their media organizations on issues relating to the programs and also relating to the policies of the Commission. The implication of this is that the INEC Press Corps must be familiar with the constitutional mandate of the Commission and the roles and powers ascribed to the Commission by both the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and our regulations and guidelines.
The team lead, DAI, Randall Elbling, also made his remarks concerning the development.
And the EU financed a project for 5 years, and we will work over these 5 years with INEC to assist with whatever the needs are to help them to organise a good election. And there's a lot of challenges out there, There is a lot of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, you have it. Since a certain president of the United States held office, everything has increased. And you, ladies and gentlemen from the press, are extremely important partners to get a credible election done.
And now talking matters that concern political campaigns and the NBC and media, that is. Let's have you know that ahead of kickoff of political campaigns for the 2023 general elections, the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, that is the NBC among others, has reiterated the need for operators in Nigeria's broadcast industry to stay off activities that could jeopardize the peace of the nation. They spoke during a sensitization forum on political broadcasting in Abuja, the nation's capital, to remind operators of broadcast industry of the critical roles in ensuring a democratic process during 2023 general elections. NBC's Director General Balarabe Ilela urged operators of the broadcast industry to ensure that reportage was made within the ambit of the law, warning that the Commission would not hesitate to sanction any individual and organization that breached the broadcasting codes. On that one, we would bring it to you in subsequent bulletin, but still on the news. Similarly, the Inspector General of Police, that is the IGP Usman Baba, who was represented by the Assistant Inspector General of Police, that is the AIG Bala Chiroma, warned the media against reportage that could jeopardize the national security during the 2023 general elections.
The silent message is that national interest must supersede every other interest. It is therefore incumbent on members of this forum to embrace a responsible reportage that will place great premium on the security and unity of the country.
On his part, the President's Nigeria Union of Journalists, that is the NUJ, Chris Isiguzo, advised the NBC and other regulatory bodies not to see the media as competitors, but partners in delivering the Nigerian project. And now let's have you know that Nigeria's National Assembly says the Delta Protection Bill will be passed into law within 30 days of receiving it from the Federal Executive Council, that is the FEC. The Chairman Senate Committee on Information Communication Technology, that is the ICT, and Cybercrimes, Yakubu Useni, made the promise at a one-day sensitization workshop on data protection organized by members of the National Assembly in Abuja, the nation's capital. The Chairman, House Committee on ICT and Cybercrime, Abubakar Lado, said the House of Representatives would expedite action on the bill. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, who spoke virtually, harped on the importance of the bill to data privacy and confidentiality. The National Executive Officer of the NDBP, Vincent Olatunji, while responding to questions, said the bill would be ready by October, adding that the agency had created over 8,000 jobs by certifying over 5,000 data protection experts. The Data Protection Bill is for an act to establish the Data Protection Commission, charged with the responsibility of protection of personal data, rights of data subjects, regulation of the processing of personal data. When we return, news from other parts of West Africa. Don't go away. Always a delight to have you back. This is Africa Today on Hills TV. And now let's take you to Mali and have you know that Mali's interim prime minister poured damning criticism on France at the United Nations, that is the UN, saying they were stabbed in the back when the French military withdrew from the country. Abdoulaye Idrissa Meiga said Mali felt abandoned in its fight against terrorism. He noted that the purpose of the meeting is to allow Mali to present the evidence in its possession, demonstrating that the French army has repeatedly attacked their country. Newsman gathered that France intervened militarily in 2013, leading to an effort to oust Islamic extremists from control of the northern Malian towns they had overtaken. Over the past 9 years, France had continued its presence in a bid to stabilize the country amid repeated attacks by insurgents, but the PM said the fight is now in the hands of the citizens. Mega also directly criticized UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, but praised the influence of Russian mercenaries and the exemplary and fruitful cooperation between Mali and Russia. Like every year on September 26, since the terrible night of 2002, the Senegalese town of Ziguinchor remembers its departed children. 100 relatives of the nearly 1,900 victims of the Joala ferry shipwreck, together with officials, laid a wreath and took part to a Muslim and a Christian commemorative ceremony Monday. Next to around 50 graves in Kantene cemetery, emotion could be felt. Mamadou Hampathe Sadio, the son of victim of Joala sinking, lamented that 2,000 people went missing without consequences or responsibility, adding that justice must be served for the eternal rest of the departed parents. According to reports, Senegal closed the case in 2003 after an investigation that blamed the captain, unaccounted for since the catastrophe. French courts also dismissed a years-long probe which found evidence against 7 Senegalese officials, concluding that Paris did not have jurisdiction. Victims' associations say 2,000 passengers from more than a dozen countries died and only 65 survived. Reports showed that the Joala sailed into a storm off the coast of the Gambia on the way from Ziguinchor to the capital Dakar and sunk to a depth of 20 meters, which is 66 feet. We now move to other parts of Africa after this break. Don't go away. Pleasure to have you back. Thank you for staying with us. According to preliminary data released today by the National Electoral Commission, that is the NEC, the Independent Democratic Action, that is the ADI opposition, led by former Prime Minister Patrice Trovoada, won Sunday's legislative elections in Sao Tome and Principe with a total of 36,549 votes. The provisional figures for the legislative elections were presented at the CN headquarters in the capital. More than 29 hours after the polls closed, a delay that prompted protest from ADI militants who burned tires near the CN offices, which were surrounded by the military. CN President Judge Jose Carlo Barreiros declined to present the distribution of seats by party as usual, referring to the Constitutional Court for his tax, justifying that the parties had presented discrepancies in their own projections. According to CEN data, the Movement for the Liberation of Sao Tome and Principe, Social Democratic Party, that is the MLSTP PSD of Prime Minister Jorge Bom Jesus, was the second most voted party with 25,531 votes. The Basta movement, created 3 months before the elections, received 6,874 votes. The former Prime Minister of Sao Tome and Principe, Patrice Trovoada, Independent Democratic Action opposition, today claimed victory with 30 seats, absolute majority in the legislative elections, and announced that he will head the next government. An hour away from that story, having you know that at least 5 people have died and scores were injured after a 6-story building collapsed Monday, September 26, in Kiambu, central Kenya. If several were extracted from the rubble alive during the afternoon, many were feared to still be trapped at the scene. According to local media reports, the building collapsed on an adjacent building, trapping residents under the debris. The Kiambu County Fire and Disaster Management Department, the Kenyan Police and Defense Forces, as well as the Kenyan Red Cross and volunteers joined forces for the rescue operation. It is not immediately clear what caused the building to collapse. Rescue efforts are underway, and emergency workers have managed to pull a child from the rubble. Kiambu County Governor Kimani Wamantangi said several others have also been rescued, but sadly, some are feared to have succumbed to their injuries.
Kenyan rescuers were still busy Monday afternoon in
Sidelines of a signing of a $4 billion gas agreement in mid-July, Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune assured his friend Mario Draghi, now the former president of Italian Council of Ministers, Algeria, whose natural gas reserves amount to nearly 2,400 billion, wants to be one of Europe's electricity, solar, and conventional energy supply. And now let's take a bus walk away from this one and get on to business after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Business Desk on Africa Today, right here on Hills TV. And talking business, in line with the International Maritime Organization determination to achieve sustainable development in the maritime industry, the federal government has said that Nigeria is committed to achieving greener shipping. A statement by the Assistant Directors Public Relations, Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, Osage Edward, quoted the Minister of Transportation, Muazu Sambo, as saying that as the country joined the IMO to commemorate the 2022 World Maritime Day, Sambo also made it clear that Nigeria would not be left out and left behind in the global move towards greener shipping, while also reflecting on the need for stakeholders in the maritime sector to begin exploring ways to transition into a greener and more sustainable future. On his part, the Director General Nemasa Bashir Jamal noted that the theme for this year's World Maritime Day celebration is in line with the agency's mission of achieving cleaner oceans and developing shipping in Nigeria. He also pointed out that Nemasa is already working in line with a call for IMO Secretary General Kitak Lim for developing countries to adopt green technology. And now let's get to Kenya and have you know that Kenyan President William Ruto has expressed willingness to purchase fuel from Russia. This comes at a time when a number of nations, notably the United States, that is the U.S., avoid engagement with Russia as a result of its invasion of Ukraine. In an interview with the media, President Ruto hinted that he would be exploring all possibilities in an effort to rein in the all-increasing fuel prices that have put a lot of pressure on Kenyans since the fuel subsidy was discontinued. The president continued by saying that in order to create a seamless financial framework and better lives of East Africans, Kenyans will cooperate closely with other nations in the region. Still to come in Africa Today is sports. Stay with us.
Good afternoon and welcome to Sport News on Africa Today. I am Richard Badung. On Sport News, NBA franchise has announced the recapture of Nigeria's D Tigers player Jordan Iwara. Selected by the Bucks with the 45th overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft out of Louisville, Iwara has seen action in 92 games, 15 starts with Milwaukee over the past 2 seasons. In his second season with the Bucks, Iwara played in 62 games and 13 starts last season and averaged 7.9 points, 3.6 rebounds, and 1.0 assists in 19.1 minutes per game. He reached double figures in scoring 21 times, including 4 games with 20 or more points, and shot 40.3% from the field, 34.8% from 3 and 83.7% from the free throw line. And away from basketball now to the Super Eagles game, as the Super Eagles are seeking to end the Foxes' 5-year dominance. Jamal Belmadi's side has emerged winners in their last 3 meetings, scoring 6 goals and conceding once since the 3-1 loss to the Eagles in November 2016 in Wuyo. Jose Pesero's side faced a tough test against the 2019 AFCON winners, who have picked up the pieces since their World Cup qualifying heartbreak in March, when they were beaten on the away goal rule by Cameroon following a 2-2 aggregate draw. Talking about the game, the Super Eagles of Nigeria will surely face the Foxes, as the Foxes are aimed to record their 5th straight win across all competitions, while the Eagles will look to return to winning ways following the 2-2 draw against Algeria's B team. Both teams have met 21 times, with either side winning 9 apiece side from 3 draws. Speaking ahead of the game, Super Eagles head coach Jose Pesero said he has a respectably solid team blessed with attacking talents of Kelechi Iheanacho, Taiwo Awoniyi, Cyril Dessers, and then former Lawrence star Sarah Murphy.
Until now, you was training well. You tried to introduce some dynamics, some methodology, some exercise for look for the best for our organization, for our team. I think until now we did the players did the maximum in the pitch, outside the pitch also. Tomorrow we play against one good team, strong team. We got to fight for beat them. Of course, it's not easy. You know all the players, but we have quality and that squad for fight with the.
In a similar concern, some top players of Algeria Desert Foxes say the Super Eagles will give them a tough game in tonight's international friendly game, as they will be vengeful. Reports show that the Foxes, after their last practice on Monday evening at the new Milad Adefi complex, formerly the new Stade the Iran Jamal Belmadi's, expect a more demanding match against the Super Eagles star player. Star player Hossein Benayada said the team is going to face a very good team from Nigeria, even though they had enormous difficulties overcoming the Guinean team, which used a lot of problems during the previous match. Alexandra Oikija, on his part, gave some clues on how Nigeria should evolve against Algeria, noting that the selection of Nigeria is not to be presented. He also said the Desert Foxes will have to keep focus to overcome the Nigerians. Finally, Sofian Ben-Debeka, who was recalled from Icham Boade's injury, also answered questions from the journalist on the game against Nigeria. And that's sport news on Africa Today. Back to Udwak Daniel for the rest of the news. I am Richard Badung.
Many thanks, Richard Badum, for that one on sports. And that's how we call it a close for Africa Today. But before we go, a quick look at our top stories. We told you Universities Commission in Nigeria withdraws directive to reopen schools. We also told you relatives and officials commemorate victims of 2002 shipwreck in Senegal. We brought to the fore the fact that Sao Tome opposition wins legislative vote. And on sport, Eagles to seek end Algerian dominance. Remember to visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and the YouTube channel at Hills TV. I am Uduak Daniel. Thank you for watching.